Well, Nintendo just pulled off something that no one has really done before. In only a few months, the Switch 2 has outpaced the PlayStation 4, the PlayStation 5, and even the original Switch in early sales. Over 10 million units are already in players' hands. That surge has helped Nintendo's profits more than double year on year, marking one of the most successful console launches in history. And yet, what is fascinating is how they went about it. The Switch 2 is not a radical new machine. It doesn't reinvent the way we play games. Instead, it is a quiet evolution from Nintendo, the most confident, seamless transition Nintendo has ever pulled off. Well, if you enjoyed this video, hit that subscribe button down below for even more Nintendo content here on Power Up Direct. Okay, first of all, let's have a quick look at the financial triumph. So behind all the sales numbers released this week is a financial story that is just as impressive. So in Nintendo's latest sales report, net sales hit 1.1 trillion yen, more than double what they were this time last year, while operating profit climbed 20% to 145 billion yen. Overall, the company's comprehensive income surged by over 120%, showing just how the Switch 2 launch has supercharged every part of Nintendo's business. And what is especially striking is how global the success is. Nearly 80% of the sales come from outside of Japan, and after years of steady, cautious growth, Nintendo is not just surviving another console transition, it is absolutely thriving through it. Okay, next up, let's have a look at seamless continuity. So, the Switch 2's biggest innovation is that it doesn't try to be one. Rather than Nintendo asking players to start over, Nintendo just invited them to keep playing, absolutely seamlessly. Backward compatibility meant every Switch owner already had a reason to upgrade. Their libraries, their save data, even their habits carried forward. It wasn't a revolution in hardware design this time, it was a revolution in comfort and ease. For once, a console launch didn't feel like the start of something new, it felt like the continuation of something that fans already loved. And the results were immediate, so Mario Kart World, the flagship launch title, sold a staggering 9.57 million units. Much of that was bundled with the console, and then Donkey Kong Bonanza followed in July with 3.49 million units, proving that outside Mario, the platform has momentum from day one. Real magic wasn't in those new releases, it was in the older ones that refused to fade. So Mario Kart 8 Deluxe, a game from the original Switch era, and Super Mario Party Jamboree have continued selling steadily, boosted by that shared ecosystem. Players have not abandoned the old Switch 1 just yet, they are simply moving forward together with new Switch 2 fans. And that is what makes this transition quite unusual. Historically, console generations split audiences. The Nintendo Entertainment System gave way to the Super Nintendo. The Wii U's identity crisis left millions behind, but the Switch 2 marks a turning point. This is the first time Nintendo has truly unified its hardware generations instead of replacing them. It's a single continuous platform where 7 years of software history still matter. It's as if Nintendo finally solved one of gaming's oldest problems, how to grow without starting over. This seamlessness has also reshaped the psychology of an upgrade. So buying the Switch 2 doesn't feel like adopting a risk, it feels like cashing in on loyalty to Nintendo. The interface is familiar, the experience is consistent, but everything is sharper, faster, and more refined. Nintendo designed the Switch 2 less as a successor and more as a natural extension, like the iPhone model that improves just enough to make the last one obsolete. It's a subtle mastery of iteration and something few console makers have achieved without alienating their core fans. In an industry that is obsessed with spectacle like 8K graphics, AI-powered realism, subscription ecosystems, Nintendo's quiet continuity does stand out. There's no subscription revolution, there's no radical new controller, there's no metaverse ambitions, just a console that does exactly what players want, only better. Okay, next up, let's have a look at why this approach works. So this strategy works because it is built on trust, both from players and developers. The Switch 2 feels instantly familiar, which means fans know exactly what they are getting. And studios can deliver polished games without having to relearn the hardware. By keeping the foundation steady, Nintendo avoided the pitfalls that doomed the Wii U, when confusion over identity and compatibility fractured its audience. Instead, this time they've kept their massive player base intact, so even as they sold 60 million Switch-era games in the same period, Nintendo proved that evolution can be more powerful than revolution. So, it's a really nice lesson in stability from Nintendo. It's a console launch that turned continuity into a competitive advantage. Well, next up, let's have a look at the safe side of success. Well, the safer Nintendo plays it, the more it risks losing the spark that made it unpredictable. The Switch 2 is a triumph of refinement, not reinvention, and that is both its strength and also its weakness too. Now, for every headline about record-breaking sales, there's a quiet sense Nintendo is doing exactly the opposite of made it legendary. Where the Wii redefined how people interacted with games, and the DS reimagined what a handheld console could be, the Switch 2 simply improves on a formula that already worked. It is comfort perfected, and that comfort might be quite dangerous for Nintendo in the long run. Well, the financials back this up, so while hardware and software revenues surged, Nintendo's digital sales actually fell by 2.8%, and its IP-related business, which includes the movies and the theme parks, dropped over 12% year on year. After the massive cultural moment of the Super Mario Bros. Movie, that decline does feel quite symbolic, as if Nintendo's broader creative momentum is cooling off just as the core gaming machine heats up again. It's proof that playing it safe may bring stability, but it doesn't always generate excitement. What is fascinating is how deliberate the restraint feels. Nintendo could have chased a bold new concept, a dual-screen hybrid, or a VR spin-off, or another experiment like Labo or Ring Fit or something like that. Instead, it's doubled down on predictability. The company is not trying to surprise its audience anymore, it's trying to reassure them. And that is a subtle and profound shift in philosophy from Nintendo. They were once defined by risk, and now they define themselves by reliability. It's a strategy that would make perfect sense for a tech giant like Apple, but for a company built on wonder, it almost feels un-Nintendo. And yet this calculated conservatism is not laziness, it's all about control. The Wii U nearly fractured the brand, and Nintendo learned the cost of confusing its audience. The Switch 2 is a direct response to that lesson. We've got clear branding, simple messaging, seamless compatibility. It's the antithesis of the Wii U's overcomplication. In many ways, Nintendo's correcting its past mistakes by staying within safe territory, but the longer it stays here, the harder it's going to become to take another leap. There's also a cultural shift happening beneath the numbers, and Nintendo's leadership, now operating in an era of enormous global profitability, seems more interested in sustainability than revolution. The revised dividend policy introduced this year underscores that. It's a clear signal to investors that Nintendo's entered a phase of steady, predictable returns rather than explosive experimentation. The company that once gambled on the motion control Wii now is acting like a corporation protecting its empire. None of this diminishes the brilliance of what Nintendo has built. The Switch 2 is arguably the most player-friendly console launch in history, but it also feels like a snapshot of a company growing older, growing more cautious, and more aware of its own success. The question is not about whether Nintendo can keep winning, it's about whether it wants to take the kind of creative risks that made those wins possible in the first place. Okay, next up, what is next for Nintendo? So looking ahead, Nintendo seems determined to keep its momentum steady rather than chase another radical reinvention. The next wave of titles includes Kirby Air Riders, Metroid Prime 4 Beyond. They're all sequels or extensions to established series designed to strengthen the Switch 2's ecosystem instead of redefining it. The company's updated dividend policy also hints at this mindset. Nintendo is not behaving like a studio, preparing for disruption, but like a mature entertainment giant planning for consistent, sustainable growth. In many ways, the Switch 2 marks the start of a new era for Nintendo, one where they're not trying to surprise the world, but they're trying to keep it playing. The Switch 2 proves that Nintendo has mastered the art of the transition. So it didn't need a revolution this time to win, just a perfectly timed evolution. By building on what already worked, Nintendo's created the smoothest console handoff in gaming history and turned continuity itself into a selling point. But there's also a quiet irony in that success. The company that once thrived on surprise, that reimagined gaming with the Wii, the DS and the original Nintendo Switch, now feels content to refine rather than reinvent. Maybe that is what this era of gaming demands. Stability, consistency and familiarity. Or maybe somewhere inside this safe success story, the next big creative leap is quietly waiting for its turn. Well, that is it for this video today, looking at how Nintendo won by playing it safe. And as always, thank you so much for watching or listening. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button down below for even more Nintendo content here on Power Up Direct. Thanks again. I'll see you real soon.